in Columbus trying to organize a group of clergy in a congregation-based organizing fashion. And so he was assembling clergy around him. And then shortly after George was on the scene, John Ashbery came into town. Of course, John being with DART, another organizing network. John was beginning to develop an orbit of clergy around John. And so sometime, and I would guess it was probably in 1994, our National Catholic Campaign for Human Development Office and the regional representative for our area, Area B, who was Randy Kiesler. Actually, Randy came in and said, boy, it seems kind of counterproductive to have two groups organizing half the clergy in Columbus. Is there any way that we can get these groups to work together? So Randy and myself and some of the clergy that were involved in that at that time began to see if we could bring the two groups together. And so Father Tom Petrie was very involved at that particular time. He was in St. Dominic's Parish, and there were some others. Father Stan had a meeting at St. Augustine and Gabriel in those years. We got clergy together to talk about the purpose of congregation-based community organizing. And lo and behold, after about 2 years, we were able to form a project, and it was called the Columbus Organizing Project. And I think it was groundbreaking in that there had never been an organizing project in any city in the United States, I believe, up to that time, where two national organizing networks had agreed to work together. So the Columbus Organizing Project was staffed by both the Gamaliel Foundation and by DART. And so they both offered training, and they worked together for, I would say, a period of about 2 to 3 years in that format. And then at the end of that period, I think both national organizing networks agreed that it was in the best interest of the organization to pick one of the organizing networks to work with and to go that route. And so as a result, DART was the chosen network, and the organization BREAD was formed. So that was the genesis of BREAD. In the early years, one of the issues that was extremely concerning is we had certain census tracts in the city of Columbus that experienced really high unemployment. Overall unemployment in the county was actually fairly low. I think it was, maybe 5.5%, 6% at that time. But there were census tracts in Columbus that were experiencing unemployment that was double-digit unemployment, and going up, even as high as 18, 19%. And so BREAD began to do some research as to why this was the case. And they found that while there was some level of expansion of jobs in the county, that the jobs were all located on the periphery, so that people in census tracts that were closer to the city didn't have access to transportation to where the new jobs in the county were developing. And so BREAD as an organization began to see that unemployment was very closely linked to transportation, and they had conversations with folks at the federal level, seeing if there could be some help in terms of federal funding. They worked with our transit system called CODA, and they also worked, to see if congregations could get behind an effort to try to support the expansion of transportation. So you had two problems. The first problem was that the buses didn't necessarily go from one place where people lived to places where jobs were. And the second thing is, even if they did go from those places, they didn't go at the times the jobs were available. And so they were able to get all the parties working together and actually get an expansion of the bus route system. They had some hubs, transportation hubs put so there could be changes made so you could actually get from one place to another. You could get out to Tuttle Mall was a big place in those years. Polaris was big. And so you could actually find ways to transfer your way to those locations. They got routes expanded so they were available at the times when people needed to work. All was well. It was a successful project. Unfortunately, about 3 years after that, I think it was, COTA couldn't continue to support that expansion of service or that level of service without some additional revenue. And so they put, I think it was 0.5% sales tax on the ballot. And that sales tax was actually defeated by voters. And as a result, many of the gains that Bread was able to leverage through its process actually then were cut back because the money wasn't there to continue to support those services. But then, of course, Bread was very active on the creation of the Housing Trust Fund as a project where the county and the city were both involved. Aaron and I were both there at what would have been the Nehemiah Action Meeting for that process, if we had called it the Nehemiah Action Meeting in those days. We called it something different, which I forget. It was over in a church off Brentnell Avenue. And I remember that, because of Bread's pressure and leverage, actually the mayor came in and announced he was going to do that. So he sort of cut off the questions by saying he was going to do it. But he was going to do it really because Bread had developed enough energy and pressure behind the idea that it was a good thing. So, and the county supported that. So then, of course, healthcare access was another piece over the years that Bread worked on. So Bread's had a strong history of school issues in terms of what do we do about truancy issues. That was an early Bread project. So there's been really a lot of successes that Bread as an organization has been able to achieve. Of course, the concept behind congregation-based community organizing is that congregations of people who have faith and who have values that support their faith life, and they want to put those values in practice in their communal life, they're able to come together, they're able to work on common projects and achieve a greater level of justice in the community by their common efforts. And so Bread's been a successful organization at that. So that's a sort of an opening salvo on what we talk about.